Sick. All right, so we're trying something new. It's not technically an on the mic situation, even though it's an on the mic. It's like almost like a round table. We need to get a new table because this just doesn't work. Table. Yeah, square table. But trying to hear some different perspectives. Everybody here came from different walks of life, but everyone here is really successful at real estate. So I think that's kind of interesting. And then obviously we're going to highlight Cayci, who was just a finalist on our in-house competition, Best in Biz, although you both did really well too. So it's not like you both were out in the first round. You both did really well.
I was robbed.
You were robbed? It was you and Courtney?
Yeah.
It always kept getting harder and harder, and we always tried to pivot and bring kind of like a situation to what is you need more mic?
Yeah, more mic.
More microphone. But anyway, so let's get right into it. So Cayci, you're a former school teacher. How is we talked about this earlier, how is talking with parents sort of like talking with home buyers? They're like kind of coming in with their own what's the word I'm looking for? Like almost like
the preconception
of like what they already know is right based on like whether they read it on Facebook, Twitter, etc. Like kind of walk us through that a little bit.
So in that case, it actually is really similar dealing with the parents from when they're coming in to talk to you like on a parent-teacher conference, especially if they're coming in mad.
Right.
For whatever reason, because a lot of them, they hear what they want to hear and they don't necessarily want to hear that there might be a negative.
Right.
So there definitely is, like with real estate, if you get a situation where you have a buyer where you have to break bad news to them or you have to talk them into going through your course of action you want them to take.
Right.
It's that sprinkling, well, let me tell you something really positive. Then I'm going to hit you with the negative. And then I'm going to come up with the solution right behind it.
The good news, the sandwich.
Yeah. And I think it's always important to, what's true with teaching and is true with real estate, is to be a problem solver, not a problem spotter. So not just being like, oh, well, we can't do that. It's coming with not just going, well, nope, oh, well, we have a problem, and then moving on. It's, this is an issue, but here's how we're going to address it right off the bat. Right.
Which kind of goes into Jamie coming from being a business owner. You saw all the problems and had to solve them. So now is it nice to be able to kind of just like isolate, okay, these are the problems that I have to deal with. I don't have to worry about X, Y, and Z.
I mean, certainly it's nice to not have to deal with like the growing of the overall business.
Right.
Here at our team, like a lot of that is taken off our plate, which is great. We get to focus on selling. But like Cayci said, there's a lot of people come in with different preconceived notions.
Right.
And you kind of have to learn how to navigate them through all those different scenarios. So I think there's still a whole bag of problems and solutions that we have to find for them. But yeah, definitely it's nice to not have to deal with certain business growth type things.
Right. Lewis, as somebody who is basically, I like to call it a born salesman, how do you take someone's preconceived, like, okay, this is what we need to do, and say, okay, well, here's reality, but then still make it seem like you're there to help versus like hey, so this is nowhere near your budget. You're not even close. This is how we're going to get you into the home. Like, how do you kind of like calm somebody down off that?
Well, it's a teaching experience, really. And you have to find ways to be able to relate to people and have it make sense for them on what they can relate to.
Right.
I'm a numbers guy, and I always try and focus on the numbers because everybody's always worried about their payment or what they're paying for something, the financial future that they have, not being overextended. So I always try and focus on those things because I think the numbers really speak to people and allow them to see what you're talking about for the most part.
Right. So jumping from that into the Best in Biz that we handled here, kind of like what were the main takeaways from everybody of how we like handled the competition, why we did it, etc.?
I really like seeing everybody's style, getting a chance to see how other people like to handle things. You have Cayci, who is so used to being in front of children and young adults and having to keep their attention and keep them focused.
Right.
It's very interesting, like watching her dynamic and how she unfolded these processes and these questions that we
right people. Because there was always, just if you weren't following, we would always have a wheel every single morning. At some point it just turned to always being Brittany's choice. Which, did anybody catch on to that, or you guys were always shocked every time it came up?
I don't really understand why it never ever landed on anything else like tortilla slap.
We had some other stuff filled in there, but it was always Brittany's choice based on, we wanted to keep you guys on your toes, even though for the most part the topics that were on there were already like relevant. We wanted to see like if we had heard, something happen like that day and like maybe you mishandled it, we wanted to give you like the immediate chance to be like, okay, here's your redemption. Like, are you going to tackle it? Did you learn that? All while still speaking literally in front of everyone, which we did once as the jury of your peers. I thought that was funny, but everyone's dead silent.
I think that like you touched on it a little bit, Lewis, but I think like the biggest takeaway for me was I don't get to sit near a lot of these people.
Right.
And everybody has their own way of handling certain objections and pitching themselves. And you get to pick up on little things that might work in how you deliver your pitch or whatever. And that's where I think I benefited the most was like, getting to hear Scott's stories that he told to win on the last day. It's like, those are stories that are now my stories that I will use when I talk to people. Yeah. And like, he's really good at kind of putting a fear in people and getting them to like hurry up and recognize that the market's only getting worse and they probably want to buy now. Right. And not in like I got to sell you a house kind of way. And like, I want you to have the best information available. So here's actual
for you to make the decision
that I've lived through that you can now take and make a decision based on what you want to do.
It gives you a sense of urgency.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and then, you made it all the way to the finals and still gave great story insight, but I think that was what they had said when it came down to the wire was literally, and you kind of kicked yourself saying that, you're like, I should have done that, was being able to tell a story that somebody can see firsthand. This is what somebody decided. This is what happened to them. Which person are you going to be? Yeah. So I think that was kind of like where it came in. I think that's a great point too. And somebody who got knocked out super early, I had her rebuttal. I was like, that's lights out. And she talked about like just being a doctor. If your cousin was a doctor, I thought that was like lights out. And again, something I had never heard before. And I've been here 2 years. So whether she came up with it or she heard it from someone else, I was like, that's kind of a lights out approach.
Yeah. And it was also great doing it. One thing that helped built along the process for me was more confidence.
Right.
Not just in speaking in front of people, because that was my career before. Though speaking in front of your peers is a whole lot different than speaking in front of students. But
that's a good point. Is when you're teaching, you're deemed the expert. You're the teacher. So now the playing field, so to speak, is leveled to where
this
now
was level instead of it being that disparity there. Right. So just going through the process and getting voted for by my colleagues, and then on that last day, whenever I finished, like I was staring at you the whole time, but when that stopped and I kind of breathed for a second, looked around, just seeing everybody being like, from, like the Jack's office being like, even people that I don't normally talk to, and then getting all the texts about how I crushed it. I was like, okay, so if I can do this in front of all of you guys all the time, I should be. Just builds the confidence for doing it in front of people when you are the expert. Right,
exactly. I think, and that's important too, and that was one of the other main purposes of the competition was to get you super uncomfortable, right? Like not everyone is born to public speak, and then throw you the same objection or the same circumstance you've been hearing time after time. It's like, okay, if this one little thing makes you uncomfortable, are you going to break down? Or are you going to try and overcome it? I thought, honestly, everybody did a great job. I mean, there was a couple, literally there was a couple where like people, and again, it was great. They would like kind of take a second and then like you kind of would get cheering from the crowd to kind of like boost your confidence, which I thought was really cool. But it was so different because, we hear you guys all the time. But as soon as you get stuck in front of a group of people, especially your peers, you're like,
yeah, I was just going to say, to touch on what she was mentioning about the confidence, it's you put your head down here and you do the work and you're out doing these appointments and helping your clients and getting these sales, and you don't ever really pick your head up to see how much you've mastered, how much you understand, and how you get an opportunity when you see going up against other agents and hearing their trials and tribulations. And you're like, okay, I've mastered that. I definitely know how to write a good offer. Like, I know the things that people want that they're going to accept on these offers. But it is really nice when you get to see from your peers, like, wow, you crushed it. And they're sending you a text like, doesn't matter if you won in front of everybody or lost. I thought you did a great job. And
right. And again, that was like the whole goal was never like, okay, you lost to so-and-so. It was just like, hey, hers was better on that day. Almost like an inspection. It's like the house is conditioned that day of the inspection, right? Like it overall could have been a great house, storm, whatever the situation is. But I think that was the takeaway is that just like any sport, like any given day, if you drop the ball and you just go through the motions, someone could be there to kind of like swipe that, which you even said on the podcast we did here is that consistency was the number one thing that you learned. Do you, as we kick around, obviously you have consistency. Do you have like a one key takeaway that you'd say like, hey, this is by far like out of 1 year, everybody's been here just north of a year. 1 year, this is what I've taken, like this is a main takeaway. His was consistency.
I mean, that's a tough one to beat.
Yeah.
Consistency
Yeah.
is everything in this business.
So then you could agree to it,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
definitely.
Agree, I would say.
Yeah.
Consistency, and with consistency comes the confidence that we were talking
Right.
about. I know when I started a year ago and I didn't know anything about selling real estate, it took me a second to kind of gain that confidence. But I
Absolutely.
remember there was one specific night, I think it was probably around 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night. I was writing an offer, getting some feedback from our leadership, and I sent them a text, and because they were like, wow, you're writing a lot of offers, you're doing a lot better than you were a couple months ago. What do you think's different? And I was like, honestly, it's the confidence that started to click.
Hell yeah.
And now, like when I'm talking to these buyers and sellers, like I feel like a completely different person when I'm talking to them. I know what I'm saying instead of maybe thinking what I'm saying is correct. I know what I'm saying is
Right.
correct.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and so and then the way that you deliver that at that point is just they receive it instead of being like, well, I don't know about this guy.
Right. Would you? I mean, I guess you'd agree.
Yeah, absolutely. The consistency and upping your communication, which that's part of the consistency is making sure you're consistently communicating.
Right.
Because they'll forget about you. I mean,
Yeah.
you can have a great conversation with somebody and they're like, okay, I'm 6 months off.
Yep.
And then you wait too long to reach back out to them and they're like, oh, wait, who are you again?
Yeah.
Oh,
That
and
follow-up.
you
Well,
got to
yeah.
follow up to
Yeah.
get things going.
You take a little bit of time off and you don't even realize that the market shifted or how
Right.
it shifted or how you can price your clients' homes or what kind of offers you need to be competitive but still give your clients, they're not overpaying, but they're still getting the home. You know? If you're consistently out there and having the conversations, doing the appointments, you know what it's going to take to get the job done and be
And-
able to shift in this quick
Yeah.
market.
Patience.
Yep.
You have to have patience and not
Yeah.
give up on people right away.
Yeah.
Oh, they're not going right away? Well, don't throw them on the side because they're going to come back. I had somebody that I spoke to in September that couldn't buy. And then I was kind of, all right, well, put you in archive.
Yeah.
You're not going to buy. She called me in April and said, hey, I've got all my stuff sorted out. I saved your number.
Yep.
Let's get going.
That's huge.
Fantastic. Let's do it.
Right. That's huge. And I think that's right. We say it all the time. It's a contact sport. And just by sitting around, looking at the market, seeing homes, that's not really, yes, it's great. You might have insight. You might have like a good idea of like what inventory looks like. But if you've no one to sell the home to or you've no buyer to bring there, that doesn't really do well either. So you have to set aside that time, which I think all of you do that no matter where you are. I mean, would you say like you guys kind of keep a consistent like pending at all times? Like, do you have like I know we have our North Star here. Do you guys kind of have like for me, I need at least 4 or 5 pending hanging in the balance. Like, do you kind of,
5 is 0 for me.
okay.
Yeah.
Do you have a 0?
0. 1.
Yeah. I only say that because you guys are always here 9 to 11 during our prospecting hours. I think if they're usually it's a situation, it's like whether it's like maybe your kid's sick or you already have an appointment set up or it's
Photos
final
or
walkthrough,
something,
photos,
yeah.
etc. But for the most part, all 3 of you block off. And I don't want to say this for you, but I think it's because you guys came from other walks of life and understand how to work hard.
Yeah.
And I think therefore a lot of people get into real estate and they're like, I need to get into real estate because I want freedom and I want to be able to know how much, control what I'm making and, have all this kind of like, I can do what I want, when you guys are the epitome of like, that is not the case.
Well, it's like the meme, I quit my 9 to 5 to
Right.
work 24/7.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the truth. You're handling everything. Like he said, at 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, he's sending out text messages about the offers that he's writing, or texting clients like, hey, I've had an hour to sit down and look at houses I've been reviewing. I think these would fit really well for you. I still try and email them out at 10 o'clock at night
Right.
because it's on my mind. I'm thinking about it. And I want them to know at 10 o'clock at night I'm still thinking of them, working on these houses, trying to find
Yeah.
them their goals.
So you think that's beneficial versus like setting the precedent of like, hey, like, from 9 p.m. on is like my free time. I'm not really accessible. You're like, I'm here.
Everybody has to have their own
Yeah.
boundaries, their own non-negotiables, etc. But for me, like being available to these clients and showing them
Awesome.
I'm putting in the effort at any given time, I think it goes a long way, and I think it's provided me the success that I've had. Certainly,
Awesome.
if I'm in the middle of something, it's a any kind of night, and it's after a certain time, and I don't want to respond, I'm certainly going to take that upon myself to wait till the morning to respond. But I try to follow up as quickly as possible and be on top of things.
Yeah.
I think there's a book by somebody we all know, Grant Cardone. It's called Be Obsessed or Be Average.
Yep.
And I think all the people in this office who are obsessed with real estate, obsessed with helping their clients, obsessed with taking care of them and completing these goals I think these are all the people who are doing very well and,
Yeah.
really involved in this.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, a lot of people who are obsessed are definitely successful here. I mean, usually for the most part, they're like, it's the same people you see in the office every day, right? I mean, and then again, you don't see them in the afternoons, but then they're back here in the morning because it's like they've structured their day properly.
I definitely take the prospecting time very seriously. If people want to do stuff in the mornings, it's pretty much a firm. I have meetings in the morning. I can't do it, but I can
Right.
reach it at 11:30.
Right. I think that's like a good thing is setting your schedule and sticking to it such that that's where you draw the line as far as like, okay, I'm still going above and beyond. I'm going out of my way. I'm communicating whatever it is, but it's just a matter of like, hey, this is how it is, done and done. Well, guys, thank you so much. I wanted to make it quick. Just wanted to hear people's perspectives. But again, like keep up the good work. I mean, congratulations. Runner up is still, best. Everybody did really well in the competition, but yeah, keep slinging homes and keep obviously providing that 5-star White Glove experience we love.
Got it.
Yeah. All right. See you guys.